Okay, thanks everybody for joining this week's seminar. Today we have Stelios Passalidis with us. Stelios did his bachelor's at the University of Ioannina and master's at the Hellenic Mediterranean University. He then moved to France for his PhD at the University of Sorbonne, working on atomic physics. And he has, as he has told me, spent several years after in France as a postdoc for the France. Wait, I remember the full name. Well, you know it as CAEA, but it's France Atomic Energy and Alternative Energy Commission.
Yeah.
Yes. So he'll tell us about ultra-high intensity laser matter interaction from ion acceleration, magnetic field probing. So we're very happy to have you. Sorry for the technical issues. Sorry for the guys in Zoom waiting. So please take it away.
Thank you very much. Well, hi, thanks. And yes, well, the talk today will be on, it will be in two parts. First of all, it will be on plasma ion acceleration during laser matter interaction. That is an ongoing collaboration with the Institute of Plasma Physics here in Crete. And the second part will be on magnetic field generation and probing in a laboratory plasma frame. And that was my work during my last postdoc in France. Well, first of all, regarding the way to change slide. No. Okay. Cool. Regarding the laser plasma acceleration anyway. Okay, apparently I see now that about the compatibility of the softwares, there is some problems probably. But anyway, let's pretend that we will see the slides. Why we study laser plasma acceleration? First of all, there are a few applications, like in medical field, the hadron therapy, where we can exploit the property of hadrons like protons or ions to deposit all the energy on the cancer cells, like when we talk about the cancer therapy. In contrast with the electrons or photons that when we try to penetrate the tissue, they deposit most of their energy into the healthy cells. So one is in medical field, the hadron therapy. Then we have protoradiography, and in general, protons and ions can be used for laboratory diagnostics. We use ion beams in high energy density physics, like for example in inertial fusion regarding thermonuclear fusion, and for example in fast ignition. And also always ion acceleration is in the field, they play a major role in the field of astrophysics and astrophysical objects. So we can study astrophysics in the laboratory. So don't pay attention to the whatever the text here, that it's also not in the best position here. But anyway, I want to refer to four in general, because if you work on plasma physics, it doesn't mean that you know the acceleration mechanisms. I just want to refer to four basic acceleration mechanisms, like the laser wake field acceleration for electrons, where you have a laser, you penetrate your target, and then on the wake, let's say, of the on the wake of the plasma, you have electrons surfing and going with a velocity in a relativistic velocity after the laser pulse, so you accelerate the electrons. And then we have three ion acceleration mechanisms, like TNSA, where in TNSA, because of the charge separation, you have the accelerated electrons, and then after the charge separation, you have the ions being attracted by the electrons, accelerated to relativistic velocities. You have the magnetic vortex acceleration. It's a acceleration mechanism that was you penetrate the target and you produce a toroidal azimuthal magnetic field, and then you have quite collimated quasi-energetic ion beams. And there is also the collisionless shock acceleration, where you have a shock into the plasma, move the shock into the plasma, and then the ions are accelerated twice the velocity of the shock into plasma, which it's also a very good acceleration mechanism for high quality and quasi monoenergetic narrow energy ion beams. Then there is a conventional, let's say, the traditional laser-solid interaction where, in principle, you hit the target, like here on the right, you hit the target with a laser, and then you have the accelerated particles, either ions or electrons, on the other side, in the direction of the laser. What we want to do, and what we have been doing in this project, is that we try to avoid the slabs, the solid targets, and replace them with a gas. For example, here's a gasket. Here's a gasket. I don't know if the mouse, maybe now will, yeah. There's a gadget, so we hit with a laser, and we try to accelerate particles by a gadget. Why this? Because first of all, it's debris free. Like you don't destroy slabs and metals and plastics into the vacuum chamber, but you just have a hydrogen or a helium gasket or whatever gas you want. And also because you always have a gas flow, you can implement high repetition rate experiments and high repetition rate accelerations. But the thing is that in a gasket, we don't have the optimum, let's say, or the desired densities and the scale lengths in order to accelerate your particles. So what we do is, first of all, with a laser to create here is a flash simulation to create a blast wave. First of all, into the gasket, focus a laser and create a blast wave. Then, so here is a 2D and here is a line out. Then here in the shock front of the blast wave comes your main laser, your femtosecond pulse, in order to see this wall, this short scale length, high density profile, and accelerate your particles from the other side. So this has already been optically shaped and replaced the solid target in the conventional traditional scheme. And here in our case, with our intensities and our densities, we saw that this regime is quite optimum for two mostly acceleration techniques. It's the MVA, the magnetic force acceleration, and the collisionless shock acceleration. Here I'm talking about near critical density plasma. Near critical density refers to laser plasmas, and it's above the critical density. Plasma is opaque for the laser, it's like solid. Below, it is transparent, so the laser will continue traveling in plasma anyway. But the previous model I showed you, it has some drawbacks, like there is instant energy deposition, like you put a fireplace inside the plasma, so you don't know anything about the laser plasma coupling and the energy coupling. Also, the density profile was just a top hat density profile, not a Gaussian, like the profiles that gases have in laboratories. So we used flash with a new, more elaborate module. It's called the laser slab. We changed a bit. We had developed a bit on it, and we could use there opacity tabulated equations of state, atomic equations of state. This model is quite elaborate, sophisticated hydrodynamic model that uses Euler equations for compressed fluids. You have a very good knowledge and information of the laser plasma coupling. So everything was quite more realistic, let's say, and consider this gadget, this Gaussian density profile gadget. And here you have the laser that you hit the gadget with a laser in order to create this blast wave in scratch hydrodynamically. But hitting with one laser, you cannot have great compression because of the well-known strong shock limit. So, okay, you produce a shock, but it's the compression is not that the desired one. So we had an idea, or anyway, we worked on using to split the laser, the first laser to split it and create two blast waves that they will walk, they will travel towards the center, the axis of the gadget, and they will collide. like we see here. They will expand and then they collide here. And as we see here, like it is for the two different, this is density profile over versus position. And we see that here is the wall, the green, let's say for one time for 0.8 nanosecond, okay, after the shot. You have one blast wave here and the other blast wave here. Then if they propagate, and in the middle you have a huge compression, and this is the desired compression in order to have quite good and density in order to have your acceleration mechanism take place. Okay, this is a scheme. Then this is, for example, a video to show that how they collide. And here you can hit with the main laser to have your acceleration. Now we made a parametric study on a few structures, few geometries. Like here, for example, it's a four beam geometry that, okay, like makes sense. The more lasers, the more blast waves, the better the compression. But, and here we have a huge compression. But this doesn't mean that we will use that. First of all, because it's experimentally speaking, it's quite difficult to synchronize four beams. And then also we saw that this compression lasts for a few hundreds of picoseconds. That is quite low in order to have your main laser, and have the acceleration. So after this parametric study, we concluded that the best and the less challenging structure geometry, topology of lasers is to intersect two beams. And here we can see that close to the center of the axis of the gadget, we have this black. This black spot is a real high density region where this will be the target for the main laser to come to accelerate. And the advantage of this scheme is that this sharp gradient density keeps the density and the scale length, the narrow scale length we need for many nanoseconds. And this is quite useful in order to implement the main beam and accelerate your ions. So this was all this, let's say, hydrodynamic evolution was studied by Flash MHD code from University of Rochester. And we took the output of Flash to put it as initial conditions to the peak particle cell code to study the acceleration itself. And here is the output of the peak code epoch that is developed by Warwick and the Imperial College London. And here, this cylinder is the shaped target, the shock of the blast wave and during the collision of the blast waves. And here we can see this is a density map, and you can see that here the red beam are the electrons, quite collimated and quite monoenergetic. Here is a spectrum of peak simulation proton energies and for different times, and we see that our simulations predict that we will indeed have acceleration at around 10 MeVs ion energy at around 10 MeVs. This is about protons, but in general, about 10 MeV per U regarding ions in general. So the acceleration seems to be feasible, and then just to see the mechanism for now, we stress that this is MVA, magnetic vortex acceleration, because here you can see in the first row the laser pulse, the electric field of the laser pulse, and here is during the interaction with the target. Here you have the magnetic field, where you can see that it's a toroidal azimuthal magnetic field creating a channel inside, where in this channel, because of the self-generated electric field, electrons here in blue will accelerate, like here. And also in this channel, protons will accelerate. So this could be, computationally at least, a signature of magnetic vortex acceleration in laser gas interaction. Only last summer we had, not me, I'm only in modeling, but my collaborator in Rethymnon, Yannis Tazes, he had the experiment, and here we can see two groups of shadowgrams and interferograms. And indeed, we see the blast waves. Indeed, we see the optically shaped plasma. And here is where the main laser beam will come in order to accelerate the ions. And we accelerated the ions, and indeed, we found them close to the energies predicted by our simulations, close to anyway 5 to 10 MeV per U. So in general, in this first anyway part of the talk, to conclude about the acceleration, we demonstrated high repetition laser accelerated ion beams. And we concluded we conducted 3D radiation hydrodynamic simulations with flash to optimize the density profile before the experiment. Then we measured around 10 MeV per U, like up to 11.3 MeV per U ions, and with 3D peak simulations, which 3D peak simulations are quite demanding computationally, and regarding the resources. We managed to do those simulations, and we found that because of this azimuthal magnetic field of about few kilotesla, we could suggest that MVA is the main mechanism underlying this procedure. And this is something that, to our knowledge, happens for the first time, so we were quite happy this summer. Now, let's go to the second part regarding the ultrafast magnetic fields created, generated, and probed in laser matter interactions. First of all, we will see two main structures, the short-scale Weibel type fields, like current filamentation stability fields, which which they take place when two different temperature electron bunches, for example, collide, and they start filamenting. You have a quite well like bubbles, let's say, of electrons, and then you see that at some point they are filamented. This is the Weibel type instability, well-known Weibel type instability, and also we will see the more traditional surface B fields like a TNSA, or in astrophysical times, Biermann battery. Maybe you are more used to that then field. So we try to distinguish between short and large-scale fields, and the way we do that is because, first of all, these instabilities are quite harmful regarding fast electron applications, like fast ignition for fusion applications, thermonuclear fusion applications. And also, such fields can resemble mechanisms that take place in astrophysical plasmas. So you can study astrophysical plasmas in the laboratory. That's why there exists this emerging field that's called high energy density laboratory astrophysics. Well, let me introduce you to the idea of the experiment. Here there's a slab, not a gasket now, but there is a slab. And here, and here there's a gasket. We hit the gasket with a laser. We create laser wake field accelerated electrons that will be our probe beam. In the end, we will have to measure their momenta, and so to see how they are deformed, and how much divergence and deflection there will be on the probe beams. At the same time, we have the main laser on the other side of on the front side of the slab, and that creates both the fountain type magnetic fields, and just inside the focal spot, just inside the area that the laser hits the target, we will see that there are some CFI fields. Like, there is this Weibel type instability just inside the laser spot, the laser interaction area. What we managed to do in this experiment, not me, but our collaborators at École Polytechnique, it was that they could have quite good control in the pump electron beam, so we could hit the target in different times, and also spatial control. So here you can go down, up, and see the deflection of the electrons regarding what fields they will hit. Of course, far away there is no influence. there is no magnetic fields, and only in the center, only where the electrons passed by the laser plasma interact, the laser solid target interaction, there we see a huge divergence in the probe beam, and that might be a signature of indeed of micrometer scale CFI fields. Computationally speaking, we here I use the Caldera particle cell code and Ester hydrorad code. They are both developed at CEA. So we use the hydrodynamic code in order to create and simulate the pre-plasma, because lasers always have a pedestal laser intensity. It's not just a spike, there is always a Gaussian profile of the energy. So that creates a pre-plasma, hot pre-plasma, and then the main peak intensity of the laser comes and interacts with that pre-plasma. So we used this hydrodynamic code. We took the output and we put it as an input in the peak code. And also, in order to simulate the electron probe beams, here we introduce 75 probe electron beams that travel through the computational domain here. And we already know, because we initialize it with a specific, according to the experiment, specific px, longitudinal momentum. In the end, we have to diagnose them, and we have to we put here a diagnostic, a phase space diagnostic, so to measure the py, the transverse, the vertical momentum of those electron bunches. And if you know the px and the py, then easily you can extract the divergence and the deflection of those electron beams. So here are two experimental maps. Here's the divergence of the electron beams, and here is the deformation, let's say, and here is the deflection, how they deflect through the experiment. Here is the scheme of the experiment, and here is a simulated a magnetic field. Here, like here, the laser has hit it, and we have the Biermann battery, or the fountain type anyway, in general, magnetic fields. And inside here, for now we don't have nothing, but we will see. Here is the deformed electron beams I showed you before, that after interacting with the magnetic fields, here we can see the deformation of those electron bunches, probe electron bunches. So first of all, away of the interaction area, there is nothing, there is no deflection nor divergence here, as we see. As we go close to the center, we see deflection because of the front side magnetic fields, and we see deflection to negative angles of the electrons. We still have no divergence. Then going down, we have a change in the polarity, and we see a deflection to positive angles of the of the electrons, but still no divergence. And only in the center, what our collaborators, experimental collaborators, see is that only in the center there is a divergence, there is a deformation of the electrons. And that is a signature that we have to see what happens inside the focal area, the focal spot, inside here. And indeed, during our simulations, in the first, even from the point, the femtoseconds that the laser hits the target, we indeed saw some CFI fields. Here you can see, here is electron density, and it can be seen as filamented here. And here is also the filamentation of the magnetic field, like we change the polarity everywhere. And this is only inside the focal spot of the laser. So in general, we have an idea now that everywhere the deflection is because of the fountain type fields, and only side here, the CFI fields might play a huge role. So here is for 30, almost 30 femtoseconds, the evolution of the CFI. Always here we have the start of the filamentation of the electrons, and also the start of the filamentation of the magnetic field. Here we see it quite more intense, and it goes on like that. Always you see this toroidal filamented structure, and it keeps going for more than 33 femtoseconds. Then at some point it starts to saturate, and we lose it. And this is quite well known. At some point, CFI and fiber type instabilities will be present only for a few femtoseconds in such conditions, because at some point there are some mechanisms that saturate that instability. And go on to compare with our modeling and our theoretical model. Here is all the experiment. Here I make a zoom in the experiment regarding divergence up and deflection down. And here is the corresponding computational results. Indeed, even in our peak code, particle cell code, we see divergence only the first moments and only in the center, only where here it is the y, the x, anyway, the horizontal axis is y, which is the position of the laser, and here is time. So we see that we have only, mostly in the start, we have during the lifetime of the CFI, we have divergence, and then no, as here in the experiment. And also regarding deflection, we see that we manage indeed to replicate the experimental data, and far away from the laser focal spot you have nothing, then you have deflection to negative angles, then you have change in the polarity, and again it is exactly the same here, change the polarity because of the different charges and the charge clouds at the rear and front side of the target, and we managed to replicate quite well the experimental data, so we believe that our model is quite accurate. So to go on and understand the physics behind those deflection divergent behaviors. And now we, in order to try to have deeper insight inside those mechanisms, we created a new post-processing cause-aesthetic approach, which is nothing but many snapshots of the magnetic fields. And then we have magnetic fields, we integrate the Lorentz force experienced by imaginary always electrons. And so we updated for every, the resolution was for every 14 femtoseconds. So we integrate the Lorentz force, we could see where the electron goes, up and down, or the behavior, the trajectory of the electron. And here we compare those two theoretical approaches. Regarding deflection, we have a quite good agreement here, as you can see, about the changing in the polarity in general, the behavior, and quantitatively and qualitatively. They agree quite well. Regarding divergence, okay, the structure is not the best here, but at least we can say that we have quite the same magnitude of divergence. Not exactly the same shape, but anyway, we find it indeed only where the laser hit the target. So in general, it seems quite safe to continue with this post-processing approach and not the consistent one we had till now. And this approach permits us to take the electromagnetic, here I just show the magnetic outputs, make a fast Fourier transform, go to the K space, and then put a filter, like here, put a filter, and distinguish between the slow varying fields and the fast varying fields. Here, this huge structure is just a laser, but we have done it also without the laser. I just put it here to show how the laser seems regarding its K. And but there is no input of the laser regarding our results, so I just put it here. And indeed, here it's all the case, all the frequencies of fast and slow varying fields. Here is only the slow varying field, and here is only the fast field. Okay, here you can see the laser field and the filamentation. So we have to compare in general all the deflection and divergence with the fast and the slow alone. Here, regarding the deflection, we see that the deflection we have, if not only, mostly because of the slow varying or the large scale founded type fields. And regarding CFI, there is no deflection on the electrons. Regarding divergence now, it's the opposite. Here is the divergence because of all the fields. And if you do the fast Fourier transform, you see that you have a very minor contribution of the slow founded type fields, but most of the divergence of the electrons comes by the fast varying or CFI type fields. So we could stress that we managed to separate the two different fields and say that indeed we have deflection because of all the type fields, and indeed there is some CFI signature inside that experiment that deforms and causes this divergence in our electron probe beam. Then, okay, just for complicity, not complicity, but to have a more better insight inside what happens here, we proceeded to some other calculations, peak simulations, where here there is a plane wave that hits a target. Here we have the CFI, CFI continues, and at some point you have the saturation here. And we did it for 6 different intensities. We just wanted to see what happens for different intensities and how this instability scales with laser intensity and the growth rates of the instability. And here, okay, you don't need to pay attention to the values themselves, but I just want to show that indeed the growth rate and the magnitude of the CFI increases with energy. We did it for 2 different 6 energies for two different angles of the incoming laser, and we see that indeed the fields they scale exponentially actually with the intensity. And also in order to be a bit more safe for our model, we here down I show a comparison between two our models and our B fields with 2 more theoretical models regarding the saturated values of the CFI during before and during the saturation, and we are quite close. We are quite safe to say that our model is okay. Here is the ion trapping model, and here is the magnetization limit at saturation. So we are quite confident about our computational model. So we are quite confident about the CFI signature during the experiment I showed you. And finally, we conducted a 3D simulation. And here, because always 3D is quite more realistic simulation, and also a very known deficiency of peak codes is that they cannot implement anyway the electromagnetic fields in 2D. So the 3D always shows a bit lower electromagnetic field, but it's quite more realistic. Here it's just an artistic view of the filamentations. And here is actual filamentations that they're both simulation, but here you can see here's a cut of the computational domain, and you can see for 2 different positions inside the target. And here we can see the beginning of the filamentation, and here a bit deeper, 6 micrometers deeper, the filamentation is quite well observed. This is like this leopard skin. And we compare the 3D CFI fields. We found it quite close to the 2D model that has been used for the experiment interpretation. We see quite close, the same behavior. Always the 3D here in that line, the 3D is a bit lower, the magnetic field of the CFI, a bit lower, like 15%, which is quite okay. And so we're quite confident that our model is good to explain the experiment conducted at the École Polytechnique, and yeah, distinguish the 2 different magnetic fields. So to conclude here too, is that yes, we diagnosed laser-driven electromagnetic fields through a high-resolution electron deflectometry technique. And it was quite precise with micrometer and femtosecond resolution. Then we used and developed some peak model in order to check and understand a bit about the physics behind those that deflection of the electrons. And we found quite okay agreement with the experiment. And we could say that because of our 2 let's say approaches, the consistent the post-processing approach that it permits us to distinguish between the fast varying and the slow varying fields, that the deflection of the electrons is attributed mainly to the found type fields, while the divergence of the electrons is attributed mostly in the CFI fields inside the laser focal spot. That is my conclusion. Thanks. By the way, let me say here that I just finished my postdoc in France and I'm just here in Greece for FYI. I'm searching for postdoc if someone is interested and has funding, etc. Yeah.
I have a question about the scheme that you set up. Is it like
Which scheme?
I mean, the description that you giving, the thing that you're studying, I get it, is that you have the interaction for a few seconds, and then you just let the system relax, and it's not like a persistent driving thing that.
No, exactly. Yes, the laser lasts for a few femtoseconds. Yes, yes, and yeah.
So I about the motivation behind choice to just learn for that, and
The motivation behind the use of the laser.
do you think it would be also interesting to study if you had a laser persistently interacting with things, to see how that would last for, and if you relax it, but then you still have a driving force to like.
Yeah, I see.
So would you be interested in taking that? Do you think that would be more relevant as a physicity or something?
Yeah. Okay. Nice question indeed. I have never thought about it. The thing is that I don't know, but if you forever or for let's say you have another laser or a second pulse of the laser or a continuous laser pulse, first of all, it is interesting. I have never thought of that, and the only bad thing I could think is that you will not like you provoke the CFI and then you just study the CFI. If you have forever a laser, then you will have forever a force creating some new electromagnetic fields there, and that could be a bit let's say noisy for the CFI itself to study it. Probably not. Of course, it sounds interesting. I told you I have never thought of that, but I don't. Right now I cannot see any bad idea. Yeah, that.
We are an astrophysics group here.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if any of that has application in astrophysics anywhere.
Yes, like for example, I know that CFI can happen when, let's say, here we study CFI in the laboratory with a laser, but CFI, you can have stability, you have everything everywhere like in a supernova or when two different plasmas counter-propagate. So here I just...
We don't have laser.
Yeah, we don't have laser. What I saw here is that with laser, you can produce such structures, astrophysical objects, in the laboratory for a few femtoseconds. And study them. So to say that there is a equivalent CFI in a, I don't know, in a jet, in a astrophysical jet or whatever. So yes, this field is a laser plasma, but we try to make copies of astrophysical objects in the laboratory. On the other hand, the MHD, the hydrodynamic codes and the P codes, I believe that they could be used without the presence of the laser. Like you can have two flows of electrons, but because you say that it's because of two different plasmas, you have two different flows of electrons and with no laser at all, and you just see how they interact and if there is CFI or other instabilities regarding the time scales, like kinetic instabilities, gravitational instabilities, like Rayleigh-Taylor, whatever. So here I show you an example with laser plasmas, but this can be expanded in plasma, so it's the same. The only thing changing maybe it would be the time scales, you know.
Can I ask another question? You mentioned somewhere the Biermann battery.
Yes.
And I heard about it, but I don't know what it is. Can you explain this to me?
No,
what the Biermann battery is, how it works?
And not in detail right now, to be honest. I cannot elaborate. It's more astrophysical. It's Yes, like Birman battery, it's I know that during the magnetic reconnect, like you have some plasma and you have some magnetic reconnection at some point, and there is some fountain type magnetic field that it comes and reconnects to the colder plasma behind, and this is like in laser physics we call it TNSA, and in a more in nanosecond scale, in a more slow procedures. This is the principle, I think, of the Birman battery effect, that during a magnetic reconnection of plasma, you have a fountain type magnetic field.
Okay, I still don't understand.
And I'm not, right now I'm not the guy to elaborate on that right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you explain a bit more about the filtration? How is it happening? And also the shapes are driven by the magnetic field?
No. Yes, actually, here you can see that the filamentation starts here. This experiment starts with every cycle of the laser. Here.
So for every pulse.
No, the change in consider that the electric field of the laser is like this. So in every cycle of the laser of the pulse, you can see here, it is like this a laser, and for every wavelength, let's say, of the laser, you have your filamentation starts like when the polarity in the field of the laser changes, you start having this structure here, the filament. And this happens because yes, it creates currents that if the electrons are like that, the currents are like this, like sinusoidal. So the electrons are into this current instability, and this current, because the electrons start filamented, then there is also a self-generated current that forces the electrons to make this filamentary behavior. So forever, this is a self-growing instability. Yeah.
So if you already mentioned that, but I'd like to ask for a comment on the sensitivity of that, the dependence of your results on the temperature difference between
Sorry, the temperature?
difference between the collider and the plasma sensor.
Yes, here the thing is that the more, let's say, this, here you can see of course, the more the faster the electron band you have, the more intense is the growth of the instability. Of course, and here, like for example, for let's say here, you can see that for low energies, like 10 to the 18th watt per centimeter, you have 0.02 kilotesla of CFI fields. And when I say CFI fields, that means that the electrons are quite colder. When you have lower laser intensity, the electron is quite colder. If you go to 2 orders of magnitude in laser intensity, then you see at least 2 to 3 orders of magnitude larger B fields. So it scales like exponentially, and here this is the scaling. On the hotter the plasma, of course, you create by the laser, the more intense is the filamentation behavior. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we can thank the
Yeah.
sensor.
Thanks.
Presented your work in the